Hey everyone, welcome back to Poplar Preparedness. We got some big news coming out of Costa Rica. I know you're all like, where? Unless you're from Costa Rica, then you're like, hey, he's talking about us. But then you probably speak Spanish and, maybe you don't understand what I'm saying. Anyway, we're going to be talking about Costa Rica here because we have some big news coming out of there. This is not like breaking news because it has been happening, but the fact that they've just declared a national emergency in Costa Rica in response to some of these things that have been ongoing since late April. So basically here, Costa Rica is under massive cyber attack. Their government institutions are being held hostage. They have their finance ministry has been particularly hard hit. Tax and customs offices are just like completely offline, and they have been for almost a month now. Their social security down. Human resource, labor ministry, and they haven't been reporting where else things have been down as well. But the fact that they have just declared national emergency begs the question of what else is going down. So, folks, as we walk through this scenario of what's happening in Costa Rica, I want you to imagine that your country is going through this right now, okay? What would it look like if the United States government got hacked to the point where its social security system got held hostage? All those checks stopped going out. What then? What about if the hiring of the United States government got locked down? What if unemployment checks stopped going out? What if I know this would actually make you feel very happy. What if the tax collection services of the government suddenly went down? Now, before you get too excited about that, remember that we're talking about the funding of the government, which may cause large portions of the government to shut down, which doesn't sound so bad to me either, but customs shutting down. They also have their customs departments shutting down, which means they can't bring supplies, food, and trade in and out of the country. The United States would wither up and die if we don't have trade coming into our country because we don't make anything here anymore, it seems like. So if we had all of our ports shut down because nothing could clear customs, what would we do then? If it's Canada, if it's Australia, if it's New Zealand, if it's the UK, if it's European Union, what would it look like in your country to be under massive cyber attack where for a month you have these government agencies and things shut down? A lot of checks not being written by the government. So this is ransomware, and it has been claimed by the Conti gang, which is based out of Russia, apparently. I have no way of verifying any of that. I don't know if this is just being blamed on them, but the report that I saw said that they have claimed that this is behind them and that they did this. Something I also want to throw out there of interest is I was surprised by this when I heard it. But did you know that Costa Rica doesn't actually have an army? They don't actually have a military. So they just don't spend money on the military because the United States protects them. The United States has what's called the Monroe Doctrine, where basically anything in the Western Hemisphere is the United States' sphere of influence, and no one else is allowed to meddle in the Western Hemisphere. Or else we'll just invade and topple governments and do all that kind of stuff, which we've done quite a bit of. No time to actually go through the whole list of invasions that we've invaded in the Western Hemisphere. But forbid it that anyone else in the world invade their neighbor to defend their borders, because, that is tyranny and, horrendous stuff. Whereas the United States does it all the time, and we don't really care. But all that to say, Costa Rica just said, you know what? Hey, no one's actually going to attack our country, so why don't we just disband the military? Interesting point. You could almost ask the question of the United States, like, is anyone actually going to invade the United States? Like, could anyone actually if we just pulled all of our troops back to our borders, could anyone actually invade the United States? If the answer is no, then why do we actually have a military? Oh yes, bad people will do bad things all over the world, just like they are right now. But but on the other side of things, if you don't have a military like Costa Rica, they just don't pay for one. And someone does something to you like a massive cyber attack on your country, it can almost, well, how do you defend yourself, right? I mean, you can threaten them like, or else we'll come and get you with our non-military. So I think that, having deterrence of having a military makes sense, and actually having military that defends your borders. The United States has a military, but doesn't actually defend the borders. So we have Coast Guard for that, but then the other branches of the government just meddle in other countries. But all that to say, we have this scenario where Costa Rica is under attack by cyber weapons, apparently, and it's bringing their country kind of to a halt. And they have this massive national emergency. So what do they do about it? They can look to outsiders for help, but what happens if this happens in your country? What happens if this happens in my country? If our government institutions suddenly stop, or if large sectors of the banking system stop, or if, as the FBI has warned us, that cyber attacks are going to come and cripple the food industry, what then? What do we do? All this is saying, SHTF situations, there are just too many of these situations. So many different options of how things can I had a bird fly right through here. How many situations where SHTF can happen without us going down one scenario or another. We can have nuclear war. We can have massive cyber attacks. We can just have the food supply chain collapsing. We can just have there's just so many scenarios. So what are you doing to prepare yourself to be ready for these things? What happens if the electrical grid goes down? We've been talking a little bit about power supplies. And for those of you who can't drop a whole bunch of money on solar generators, you can get a conventional generator, which is a lot better than nothing, right? And if you can't drop the money for a conventional generator, the cheapest option, which is what I'm recommending, I recommend this a lot in the comments, is you need to prepare your home so that you don't need electricity. If you cannot produce electricity for yourself in an electricity grid situation, well then think through what you would actually need power for, fridge, freezer, and get it so that you can sustain a power outage and you be okay. That means if you have large stockpiles of food in a freezer chest and you don't have a power backup, that's not a good combination right there. Now, if you can't pay for a power backup, well, maybe you should look at the possibility of converting all the food in your deep freezer into canned food that's shelf-stable, or just buy different food, right? Dry foods, foods that don't need refrigeration, don't need freezer space, right? If you have that, then you don't need to have that electricity to keep the refrigerator and such going. Cooling and heating in your home. Do you have alternative ways of cooling and heating your home so that you can it can stay livable? Do you have a basement that you can go down into and cool down if it gets too hot out? Do you have a way that you can, like a pool or something like that out back, that you can cool down on? Because heat exposure can kill you in a lot of places in the country, right? In the wintertime, do you have a way of heating your home? If you're on electricity, then you need a different way of heating your home. If you have natural gas, how dependent is your heating system on electricity? My old apartment that I was renting had natural gas heat, but it had an electric fan, which made it so that the heat didn't work when the power was out. So think through all that kind of stuff. Just because you have something, make sure that it will function without electricity. Right? And if not, figure out how you can replace that electricity or have an alternative way of heating or cooling. All right, folks, that's what I got for you. Steve Poplar, out.